Today's episode is brought to you by Mazars.
SoundCartel.
As the vaccine rollout begins, but snap lockdowns could still loom, the future for many businesses is also unknown. The financial and mental health impacts of COVID-19 have been profound. So, how did one small business owner ride out those early days and bring her business and herself back from the edge? From SoundCartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. Six years ago, with a background in advertising, Kate Fennessy began her own social media marketing business, Paperboat Digital. She's an employer of a couple of staff and she's a single mum of one. Pre-COVID, Paperboat Digital was humming along nicely. Life was good, and Kate admits that she wishes she'd appreciated the stability a bit more at the time. A little later, she explains not only how she overcame the crisis, but how it forced her to think differently about her business and the kinds of services she loves to provide. First, Kate tells me what she thought when COVID-19 first hit and the immediate impact on her business.
It was terrifying. It was panic. I lost about 15% of business within a week. Just a series of calls and emails were suddenly coming like, hey, Kate, we need to reduce the retainer. Hey, Kate, we're going to pause the retainer. It was so scary, and I didn't know if that dip was a landslide. I didn't know where it was going to end, but it actually did stop quickly. So I sustained those quick losses, and then I had to kind of go, okay, planning mode, what could be next? So it was really scary at the very start.
Well, you're based in Melbourne, where there were 2 lockdowns in relatively quick succession. What did the journey through the height of the pandemic look like for Paperboat Digital?
Well, after sustaining those quick losses, I then realised there was a bottom to it. It steadied. And not only did it steady, I started getting business inquiries. There were panicked business owners all over the place. Suddenly, well, I can't do X, so I better focus on my marketing. I can't do this, so I'm going to get my social finally sorted. So as quickly as I got the fright of the initial losses, I also got quickly a reassuring sense that there was a place for me in this new economy, that I could help. And I actually, at the peak of the pandemic, helped via my local council. I'm down in Frankston. Frankston Council set up a mentoring program, which I got involved in. So I was able to get really up close with businesses to see how they were going. Out of it, I got more confidence, I think, realising that I have value to add to the economy and I have a place in this new world as it was evolving. So even though I had early losses, I had a lot of queries that gave me confidence as well. It was a busy time though, and I was absorbing a lot of stress because I had the stress of my clients, particularly the new panicked ones who were coming in going, help, I need to pivot quickly. And I had the stress of my contractors. I was trying to keep it together for them. So it was definitely stressful and intense.
It was such a chaotic and scary time for yourself and your clients. What did you learn in those early days, Kate?
Definitely, I'm back to a place where I'm thinking about the future of the business. All thoughts about my own business was sort of on hold. I just was busy doing the work. I was in the trenches. I was really putting my clients first. And I feel like what happened in that intense time was actually got closer to my existing clients. I spent more time on Zooms. I'd never used really Zoom before. I spent more time getting straight to the core of, okay, what can we do? How are things going? I got to know my clients better, and I believe it actually strengthened my relationship. So the takeaway for me was that I had value. It was like I knew I was in a service industry, but I was actually able to feel like I was helping, and that felt really good. So if anything, it's probably crystallised my desire to be useful and helpful. And so that's definitely something that came out of that period.
Can you talk a bit about the financial impact of COVID in the early days before you reset and new clients came on board? What did that look like for you?
It was really scary. I did actually get to a point where I was eligible for JobKeeper. So that was actually a massive relief. And it was great to know that my contractors were also qualifying because that took the pressure off me. If my retainers go down, that flow-on effect to them goes down, and I felt really guilty about that. But once I realised it was okay and that there were new business queries happening, I felt a little bit more confident. But just in that early period, I was literally looking at the savings account, dividing it by 6, going, I can survive 6 months. So I think JobKeeper took a lot of pressure and stress away. And I didn't qualify the second time, which I was actually really proud of. It meant that I had built myself back up. And I think I ended the year between 15 and 20% down on where I'd started, which for me, I was happy with that, considering everything.
Was there any point where you had to let one or two of your staff go?
I didn't, but they actually chose to go. It was funny. I think the pandemic had that intensifying impact on people. And one of my best young writers, who's sort of in her mid-20s, she decided she wanted to pursue her passion for art. You know, who was I to get in the way of that? I was excited for her. So I ended up losing 2 writers, and then I've brought on 3 more now, young writers who I love to support that are coming through this industry. So that was, again, that's stressful. It's not ideal. Put all that together and it's a lot, pandemic and the pressure and losing clients, but it's really worked out really well.
So you were 2 staff down, had way less money coming in but doing twice the work?
I think at one point my daughter said to me, "Mum, were you always having this many meetings?" And I was like, no, I wasn't. I think the demands on me definitely increased. I felt that I had to hold pressure for my contractors and provide them with stability and confidence. I had to do that for my clients. I definitely put more hours in, more worry, more stress, more work for ultimately less retainer. But just in the last few weeks, actually, a lot of those early retainer losses are clicking back into place, and it feels so good that I waited and played the long game with those clients. My hairdresser, I mean, what was she meant to do? She can't pay me for social media marketing when she's not open for the majority of the year. So it's been really lovely to have those conversations in the last few weeks that they're ready to get back. They've survived. And some of them have actually had a good experience where they've had better online sales than they anticipated, for example. So, yeah, it was hard. It felt like more pressure than I've ever managed. But that, again, is not a bad experience to go through. It proved to me that I could handle it. And as my wonderful accountant said to me, "Kate, congratulate yourself for having survived and thrived in a pandemic." And I do feel pretty proud of that fact. So
absolutely,
not all bad.
Not all bad. So do you have any new clients that you never thought you'd really have on your roster as a result of the pandemic?
2020-esque new client is a cleaning company. We're talking sort of 200-300 staff, really aspiring to be a real player in that industry. And of course, cleaning all of a sudden is so important. So we took a more thought leadership approach. It's very LinkedIn focused. I've partnered with a journalist and we're doing content that's meant to position them as real leaders in the industry. So that was really interesting. I wouldn't have predicted that would come into my stable. It's not the kind of client I would have normally been looking out for, but that's been a fantastic partnership. A few more small businesses came into the mix, but I had a sort of a cluster of panicked clients, and I've learnt those lessons already. Don't take on clients who are coming to you for the magic bullet, because usually that's just not going to work. It falls apart really quickly. So I sort of feel like I've got back to a stable suite of clients now, and a lot of those I've had for years actually.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
You talk about panic, and it was such a stressful time professionally and personally for so many people. What kind of toll did it take on your mental health?
I'm a single parent. I have a teenage daughter who was doing Year 12 last year, so that was already intense. And I think that, like I said, it was so much collective pressure on me that I wasn't used to. It definitely affected my sleep. And once I recognised that, I had to return to things I've used in the past, like meditation apps. My crutches were jigsaw puzzles, podcasts. I listened obsessively to podcasts. For some reason, I could not concentrate to read, which I normally love to read fiction, but I couldn't concentrate during the intensity of the pandemic. I'm a social person, so I was one of those people who pretty quickly had to organise regular connections through Zoom with neighbours, with friends, because I needed those social outlets. And the other aspect was walking. I just trod a path through the streets of Frankston. I would literally march off to the beach every day, come rain, hail or shine, because I had to get out of the house and I had to reset. Those things got me through, but I'm not going to lie, it was really hard.
Do you think creatively there's been any differences in the way you deliver work, or the messaging is different? What's changed, do you think, in social media over the last 12 months or so?
I really do, and I think that it's something I've always loved anyway, and it's very much my style of marketing. It's authenticity. We hear about it all the time. We hear it's a trend. We hear it's be authentic, be as human as possible, don't be a robot. Last year, I feel that actually happened. Businesses pulled back the curtains and showed who they were. Like an example that was not a client of mine, but a local cafe that I already liked and thought was pretty cool. But I just remember the business owner wrote this incredibly honest, vulnerable really long post on Facebook explaining how he felt that the hospitality industry was going to cope and what it needed. It was so honest. It's made me look to him as a business leader. And I would previously have just thought of him as a random business owner. So whereas now I really think I've got a connection, that's as a consumer. I probably encouraged my clients to do the same. And in fact, one of my clients, Turali, it's a merino wool producer here in Australia. Our first meeting a couple of weeks ago was all about personalisation. I looked at the data supported it. I said, hey, we really need to show who we are. We are not Country Road. I'm not picking them out for any reason, but they don't show you who they are. They just show you their products. But we are different. They're a real family business. I said to the designer, can we start hearing from you a bit more this year? What inspired you? Why? And everyone agreed, and we're going to start writing blog posts once a month that I'm going to write that tell those stories, because I noticed a lot of people during the pandemic kept asking them questions about their business, and I could see from our top posts that the posts about the brand consistently did well. So that's an example of me leaning into the personalisation trend and really thinking that after 2020, people want to support small business and they care about who you are and your values.
And last question, Kate. Now that you've waded your way through this tidal wave of a pandemic, what's next for Paperboat Digital?
Now I'm in that stage where I'm returning to that question with all these lessons from 2020, and I'm actually really excited. I've always known that education is something I love and enjoy, so I'd love to move eventually into teaching people to do what I do, which is how to be a social media manager. I think my sweet spot, weirdly enough, is when people are lumped with social media in their existing role. I feel like that's a specialty for me. It happens in many organisations. People get an existing job role and then they're just told, oh, and by the way, you'll be running our social media. What? They're not given adequate hours for it. They're not given any training or support. And I'm doing that with a few new clients this year because often it can be done really well. They just don't have the confidence or the skills. So I think that's the direction I'll slowly move. But one thing I said to myself at the start of the year is that this is a year not to rush and push myself. I really honestly feel like I still have to recover from last year. So I'm going to take it slow. I've given myself sort of 6 months just to continue to stabilise my business, and then I'll start working on those other chapters after that, I think.
That was Paperboat Digital Director Kate Fennessy. This episode of Business Essentials Daily is produced by the team at SoundCartel. Thanks for listening. I'm Nicole Goodman. We'll bring you more Be Daily tomorrow. Follow at BE Daily Podcast across social media and head to bedaily.com.au for more from the Business Essentials Daily podcast. SoundCartel. This episode was brought to you by Mazars. To find out more, visit mazars.com.au. That's mazars.com.au.